The Seton Clark organisation, M.J. Trow and Michael Sheard present Reginald Marsh as Inspector Lestrade and Kenneth Kendall as the narrator in Exit Centre Stage, Yarn of the Yard, by M.J. Trow. Episode 1. The Adelphi had never seen anything like it. Gilbert, Sullivan, Wilde and Cavendish all under one roof. No wonder the great and the good of polite society flocked there that sultry evening in the July of 1893. The production, to raise money for Lady Eveline Ferrah's Fund for Hopeless Alcoholics, such as Lord Ferrah's, was a single night of patience. And for one night only, Lady Ferrah's had assembled a host of talent, professional and amateur, to tread the boards for her just cause. And there was someone else there, too, not particularly great, not even very good, and hardly ever polite. Inspector Sholto Lestrade of Scotland Yard sat in row F, seat 29, just behind the pillar, one of those that the rest of society managed to avoid. His dear friends, Leticia and Harry Bandicoot, had asked him to come. Leticia was very good, gliding over the sulphur-lit stage like an angel in frills and furbelows. And Harry, well, Harry was Harry, really. He had a good tenor voice, but he always seemed to be in the wrong place. And he managed to drop the cloak of the great Cavendish with a small rustle that grew into a thunderous metallic clash as a tea-tray went with it. It was at a particularly poignant moment in the play, too. Oscar Wilde, sitting regally in a box with what appeared to be a cat on his head, clapped loudly, braying, "Keep it in!" Well, it had been a few moments since the entire audience was looking at him. One by one, as the curtain came down, the greats appeared in the greenish glow of the footlights. The legendary Sir Arthur Sullivan took his bow first.
How kind!
Then William Gilbert carefully circled his co-writer and bowed low.
It's nothing, really.
The most rapturous applause, however, was reserved for dear Oscar, his buckles flashing in the limelight, the velvet of his breeches sumptuous in its pile. He looked like a walking carpet.
I shall, of course, monsieur.
Finally, Lady Eveline Ferrah's, all fan and flowers, curtsied so low that one, nay, both of her breasts almost popped out of her gown beneath her glittering emeralds, and she thanked the audience most warmly for their golden-hearted generosity.
Thank you most warmly for your golden-hearted generosity. A lot of drunks will be very happy tonight as a result of your charity.
And as the audience went out into the still warm summer's night, they fell over a few of them underneath the arches. Lestrade had told himself he wouldn't go to the after-show party, but Leticia had insisted he be there. There were some wonderful people he just had to meet. Actually, he'd met Gilbert, Sullivan and Wilde before, and hadn't really cared for the experience. The one he hadn't met was Trevelyan Cavendish, the leading man.
Charmed.
I'm sure you are. 5 and 9. Plays merry hell with my crow's feet, if I had any, that is. So, you're a friend of Harry and Leticia's, are you? Up for the season?
No, I live here.
Ah, a townhouse. Where?
Pimlico.
Where?
Pim...
Yes, that's what I thought you said. Oscar! Oscar! How was I tonight?
Good isn't the word, Velly. I've never seen you cover your fluffs better. Is Bosie here? The little darling promised me, and I've seen no sign of the young rapscallion. Psst, boys, eh?
Sholto, how are things at the yard?
Murder. You were very good tonight, young Harry.
Was I? I say that's awfully decent of you. Have you got a drink? Actually, it's a bit near the knuckle, this, isn't it? Dear old Eveline raising funds for the inebriated, and here we are, drowning in champagne. Veuve Clicquot.
Thanks. Leticia was good too.
Wasn't she, though?
Haven't seen you two since Manchester. Settled in at Bandicoot Hall?
Oh, Nanny Balsam's got us organised as always. Abianto.
Well, Harry, nice of you to invite me, but I really must be...
But Sholto Lestrade never finished his sentence. There was an ear-piercing scream that seemed to come from the stage. Someone dropped their glass, much to the disgust of Lord Ferrah's, to whom such waste was sacrilege itself. The murmurs in the green room stopped, and there was an eerie stillness. Lestrade was the first to seize the moment. He stuffed an inedible canapé into a handy jardinière and made for the heavy velvet curtain. It was particularly unfortunate that when he wrestled it aside he was staring at a blank wall, from which the peeling paint hung in tatters.
Over here.
Lestrade slid smoothly to his left. He ducked through a doorway, partially screened by painted flats, and was out onto the stage. The sulphur lights along its front edge were still lit. Beyond them was the blackness of an empty auditorium. But in front of them, his body twisted and jackknifed in agony, lay all that was left of Trevelyan Cavendish.
Good Lord!
Right.
Looks like he's dead.
Won't be the first time he's died on stage.
Someone call the police!
I am the police. Now, where's the manager? No one leaves the building. Everybody! 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 Mr. Wilde, stay calm.
By Lestrade's order, the body was left where it was. The only man the inspector could trust on the spur of the moment was Harry Bandicoot, so he sent him running in search of a copper. By midnight, the Adelphi was ringed by police, and while the cast and guests, irritated by the enforced incarceration, fumed and ruminated in the green room, Lestrade set about the grisly business in hand. He stripped off the infuriating tail coat and loosened his white tie. He knelt beside the contorted body of the leading man, who looked for all the world as if he'd taken a spear in his stomach, his knees drawn up tightly against his chest. Lestrade lifted the dead man's right eyelid. The pupil was tiny, like a pinprick in the dull eye. His scarred lips were livid, matching his ears, and his left hand still clutched convulsively at his throat. The inspector bent towards the twisted face, and his nostrils twitched. He rocked back on his heels, gazing out into the darkened theatre. There was no laughter now, no thunderous applause, just the slow, measured tread of the constable, walking the corridor that ran the length of the stage behind the curtain. Lestrade squeezed his way through the dimly lit passages until he'd reached the manager's office.
Mr. Dysart, I shall need this room.
We've seen nothing like this since Lady Bottinger's revenge. It'll be all over tomorrow's papers. If you'd asked me, I would have said Trevelyan was the picture of health.
He probably was, until somebody killed him.
What? But I thought...
Yes? And what did you think, Mr. Dysart?
I thought he had a heart attack. I thought the police were a mere formality. What with the celebrities present here tonight? Oh, my God! Ruin! Ruin!
All right, calm yourself, Mr. Dysart. We've had enough hysterics of one night. How is Mr. Wilde, by the way?
Oh, he's had a few absinthes. He's holding his own.
That's a relief. How well did you know the deceased?
Trevelyan, one of my oldest and dearest friends.
You mean...
Scarcely at all. We managers of theatres can't become over-close, Mr. Lestrade. It doesn't do. Actors are a peculiar lot. They all have their peccadilloes.
So I've heard. Tell me, was Mr. Cavendish married? Next of kin and so on?
Only to the theatre. He was tipped to be the next Henry Irving, you know. As for next of kin, he was related to the Trees, a minor branch, of course. I'm afraid Trevelyan wasn't the most popular of men, Inspector. Greatness rears enemies, I'm afraid. Many's the row I've just happened to overhear at rehearsals.
This is a murder inquiry, Mr. Dysart. I shall need the full particulars.
Yes, of course. Well, he and Nellie didn't hit it off.
Nellie?
Dame Ellen Roberer, the leading lady.
Ah, and what was the cause of their rows?
What it always is with thespians. It's all about the limelight, you see. Who has top billing? Who has his or her name above the show's title on the programme? Well, it looks as though Trevelyan got centre stage after all, doesn't it?
Off-stage, Dame Ellen Roberer loomed larger than she did on it. Her immense bosoms, rounded out by years of operatic breathing, would have been quite intimidating to a copper of less experience than Lestrade. As it was, he took them both in his stride.
I gather you didn't care for the late Mr. Cavendish.
Didn't care is rather a namby-pamby way of putting it, Inspector. I hated him.
Enough to kill him?
Possibly, although I should have thought his fans were already doing that.
I'm sorry?
Trevelyan was 48, Mr. Lestrade. Obviously a man of your training would have discerned that already. In our profession, Inspector, that's not just over the hill. That's down the bottom of the next valley. Trevelyan's career was over.
Mr. Dysart seemed to think he'd be the next Henry Irving.
Well, there you are.
Tell me, Dame Ellen, was Mr. Cavendish attached?
Only to himself. You've seen his dressing-room, have you?
Not yet.
There are mirrors on the ceilings. Always very proud of his head of hair was Trevelyan. Always did his own, you know.
Is that unusual?
Mr. Lestrade, in our profession, it's unheard of. I have not handled a single hair of my own coiffure since September 1886. But, of course, I was a slip of a girl then.
What did you row about?
Row? Hardly that. I merely told Trevelyan what I thought of him. Conceited, inferior, with all the talent of an escritoire.
Oh, come now, Dame Ellen. What did you really think of Trevelyan Cavendish?
If you must know, I thought it was delightful when he died. Quite the best thing he's ever done. I shall, of course, weep buckets at his funeral and express my objection to any reporter who beats a path to my door. I assume the objectionable misfit was murdered?
He was, madam.
Wilde.
Pardon?
Oscar Wilde. There's your man, if man is the right word.
Why?
Ask him, Inspector. But if I were you, I'd keep my back to the wall at all times.
We've met before, Mr. Wilde.
We have?
At the Cadogan Hotel. Must be 2 years ago.
The Cadogan? What was I doing there?
Having a drink with Lord Alfred Douglas, if my memory serves.
The Marquess of Rulesbury's Queen, you mean? No, I'm very cross with Bosie. He promised me faithfully he'd be here tonight.
Did you know the deceased, Mr. Wilde?
Cavendish? Yes. Rather a poseur, wasn't he?
Oh, you didn't like him?
Good heavens, no. A vain peacock of a man who struts his hour upon the stage. And there's a rumour he did his own hair.
Whereas you...
Monsieur Maurice, the King's Road. The way he teases each girl would bring tears to your eyes, Mr...
Lestrade.
Quite. No. Maurice is an artiste, an aesthete of the first water, unlike Trevelyan, who is neither.
Tell me, Mr. Wilde, had you... that is, did you... you and Mr. Cavendish...
I don't know what rumours you've heard, Inspector, but let me put your mind at rest. I am a lover of youth and beauty. Cavendish had neither. Dame Ellen has just confided in me that he was murdered. Well, that's despicable, of course, but worse crimes happen every day. Bosie's father split an infinitive last Thursday. I had to lie down.
Really?
No. Take my advice, Mr. Lestrade, and cherchez l'homme. The particular homme I had in mind is that rather shy young man with the astonishing pectorals who dropped Trevelyan's cloak in the second act.
Harry Bandicoot?
Exactly. I met him at rehearsals this afternoon when I did my customary lap of honour, and deciding on whose lap I would sit tonight. He was surprisingly diffident for an actor. Wouldn't tell me who he was at first. Imagine! A lovey who dare not speak his name. Very odd.
Perhaps that was because he had met you before as well, Mr. Wilde.
Really? What a very small world. Where was this?
The Cadogan Hotel.
Good heavens, man! I don't remember going there once, never mind twice.
This was the same occasion, sir. Mr. Bandicoot was on the force then, with me.
Oh, how appalling!
What is?
That this Bandicoot is a bent copper. Whatever next?
A bent copper? Oscar Wilde called me a bent copper.
Now, Harry, there's no glory in rearranging Mr. Wilde's face.
Damn it, Sholto, the man's insufferable.
He hinted that all was not well between you and Cavendish.
Oh, did he? If you must know, he was offensive to Leticia.
Leticia?
He made a remark about amateurs. Well, apart from Cavendish himself and Dame Ellen, we all are. That was the point of the evening, to raise funds for Lady Eveline. You can't do that if you have to pay professionals. How did he die, Sholto?
Now, what an improper question, Mr. Bandicoot. Now that you are a suspect.
A suspect? Sholto, are you serious?
I'm always serious, Harry, you know that. Trevelyan Cavendish died by poisoning, one of the corrosives. Phenol will be my guess. Carbolic acid. Doubtless an old scholar like you will be familiar with its chemical formula.
Now I know you're not serious. I went to Eton, remember. I don't think that we had any science lessons. If it wasn't in Cicero, it didn't exist.
Which in itself poses a bit of a problem.
Why?
The taste, the smell. Have a go at this.
What is it?
It's a glass, Harry.
Yes, but I mean, Trevelyan's.
Exactly. I found it by the body as you see it now, with the stem broken. Smell it.
What?
Go on. Won't kill you any more than it did him.
Champagne. Veuve Clicquot, 84. Possibly 85. Lord Ferrers would know.
I'm sure he would. The point is that if Trevelyan Cavendish took a swift draught of phenol, he didn't take it from that glass. He'd have been able to smell it. So would you.
Then how...
Was it invested? I don't know. Ladies of ill repute have been known to kill themselves by accident using phenol as a douche. I'm pretty sure that's not how Mr. Cavendish took it. Besides, his lips are particularly badly affected, as is his tongue. You might say he bit off more than he could chew tonight.
Where did you get this stuff from?
Phenol? Anywhere. It's a disinfectant. Common in suicides.
Sholto, you don't think...
Cavendish took his own life. It's possible. But why do it so publicly?
One last play?
He was arrogant enough, I suppose. All right, Harry. You'd better send in Sir Arthur Sullivan. Somebody here tonight wanted Cavendish dead, and I might just trap one of them into telling me who and why.
In the event, it was not just Sir Arthur Sullivan who came into the manager's office at Harry Bandicoot's request, but William Gilbert too.
I'm afraid it's not the policy of Scotland Yard.
Oh, no, Lestrade. I'm not having Sullivan here talking to you on his own. There's no telling what he'll accuse me of.
Would you tell this half-wit that he's the last person likely to enter my conversation, or even my mind?
That's because it is a well-known fact that Arthur Sullivan has no mind.
Gentlemen, please. Now, may I remind you that a man is dead. If you insist on being interviewed together, so be it. But I cannot have this incessant bickering.
I don't bicker. He does.
Nonsense. If Oxford University gave out honorary degrees for bickering, he'd get one.
Sullivan could bicker for England.
Sir Arthur. Now, how long have you known the deceased?
Cavendish? Several years. He was lamentable in Pirates in '80. Almost the worst young Frederick I've ever seen.
Really?
Too old. Had to wear a toupee even then.
Toupee? But I thought Mr. Cavendish was very proud of his hair.
So he was. What there was of it. But he had to tweak his own into position so that it enmeshed, as it were, with somebody else's.
Somebody else's?
Oh, yes. He spared no expense. I heard he had it imported, made up from the tresses of Polynesian handmaidens.
I'd heard Patagonia.
Tell him it's Polynesia.
Who knew about this? The wig, I mean.
Everybody did. Of course, he begged for a part in Utopia, but frankly, he was past it.
Never been anywhere near it.
So, neither of you can think of a reason why anyone would want to see him dead.
Of course.
Say on.
Well, to be candid, Trevelyan Cavendish was such a repugnant individual that anyone could have done it.
Wilde hated him because he turned him down.
Turned...
I'd rather not be too graphic. It was rather a long time ago.
Cadogan Hotel, March '81, I'd heard.
82, April, Suite 4.
5. Wilde made his usual advances. Cavendish retreated.
Blacked Wilde's eye.
Gave him a thick lip. Well, thicker lip.
Then there's Dysart.
Dysart?
Owed him a considerable sum of money. Cavendish was demanding settlement.
10,000.
I heard 12. But of course, Inspector, you're forgetting Dame Ellen.
Professional jealousy?
Good Lord, no. Nellie was absolutely dreadful in Iolanthe. Anyway, they hardly ever went for the same roles. No, he jilted her.
Really?
It was all in the Times. 85, January.
February. And it was the Graphic.
Nasty business, really. There she was, waiting at the church. Lord, how he did upset her.
Writs flew. Probably in all directions. It's a terrible thing, breach of promise.
She swore revenge.
I heard she just swore. The Dean of St. Paul's turned quite white. overnight.
So you're telling me that any one of these people had a motive? Except, of course, you two.
Do I look as pale as you, Arthur?
Paler, William.
Now look, I will have you know that Sir Arthur Sullivan is a man of unimpeachable conduct, the finest musician of this, or indeed any generation.
And if you are attempting to besmirch the character of Mr. William Gilbert, a gentleman soon to be honoured by the palace, or I'm not the finest musician of my generation, may I remind you that this wordsmith is the creator of some of the most dazzling prose this country has ever seen. May I also remind you that there are laws of slander in this same country.
And of wrongful arrest. Arthur, shall we? I cannot bear this man's snivelling presence any longer.
Absolutely, William.
Leticia Bandicoot had never seen a man die before, yet only 2 hours earlier Trevelyan Cavendish had dropped to her feet, not so much in admiration as in a coma.
He said he wanted to apologise, Sholto, for his rudeness to me in the dress rehearsal. Why he had to do it on stage, I don't know. Perhaps he didn't have the greatness to do it with other people around.
What happened then?
He complained it was hot, and began clawing at his collar and throat. His neck did look awfully red. Then he began to, oh dear, sort of twitch. His face, he slumped to the floor, writhing about. It was dreadful, just dreadful.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry to have to put you through this, but I have to know. I have to understand.
Yes. Yes, of course. I'm all right. Sorry.
Tell me, at the end of the show, when the curtain closed for the last time, did you notice what Cavendish did?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. He pirouetted around the stage while we all said how marvellous he was. Well, all except Harry and Dame Ellen. And then he went to his dressing room.
His dressing room? Now, Dame Ellen mentioned that too. Come with me, will you, Leticia? I think we might find a few answers there.
Motive? Motive? What are you talking about?
A motive for murder, Lord Ferrers. A reason for killing Trevelyan Cavendish.
Are you saying I had one?
No, but somebody did. I am merely pursuing my inquiries.
Well, bally well pursue them somewhere else. I'm a peer of the realm, defrayed. The Prince of Wales' baccarat partner. The Ferrers go back to Doomsday, you know.
I'm sure they do, sir, but a man has been murdered, and I have my job to do.
Job? Oh, yes. How quaint. Must be bally awful for you. Still, somebody has to do it, I suppose. Look, how much longer are you going to keep us all here? I mean, the Veuve Clicquot ran out minutes ago. I'm quite parched.
How is your wife's fund going, sir?
Fund? Oh, very well, I believe. Why?
I was just curious. How well did you know the deceased?
The what? Oh, Cavendish. Well, hardly at all. He used to give the mem acting lessons from time to time. Bally rot, if you ask me.
The mem?
The mem Sarb, Lady Ferrers. Good God, to Spade. Haven't you been in India?
No, sir, never.
Good Lord. It's the brightest jewel in the imperial crown, you know. Never been to India. What is it all coming to?
So, Trevelyan Cavendish gave your wife acting lessons?
Yes, typical of Eveline. Embraces causes like the rest of us embrace native girls. Well, in the old days, of course. Personally, I'd rather cuddle a bottle of bubbly these days. Can't catch things from a bottle of bubbly, can you? Well, cirrhosis, I suppose, but I've got that already. Tell me, Lespade, is it because we're so close to the river that this place is overrun with rats?
Rats, my lord?
Well, there, man. There was one nibbling your blotter just then. I squashed 3 waiting for a refill in the purple room, or whatever the bally colour of it is.
Ah, rats. Yes, they're everywhere, aren't they? I find banks particularly full of them.
Banks? Ah, no, that's where Messrs. Coots are so marvellous. Have their own rat-catcher. Never see one of them scurrying round there. No, it's the cockroaches at Coots. Plop right into your champagne if you're not careful.
Really? Now, would you excuse me, my lord? I have to send one of my constables on an errand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been very patient.
We have indeed, but we do all have homes to go to.
Of course, Mr. Wilde. Although I'm afraid one of you will not be going to it tonight.
What do you mean,
Mr.
God? You can't mean that one of us.
Oh, I can, Sir Arthur. You yourself gave me several leads.
Arthur, how could you?
I realise that talking to you all like this is contrary to the policy of Scotland Yard. It's not even the sort of thing you'd find in the worst of the penny dreadfuls. But time is pressing, and I feel you all deserve a reward for your patience.
That's very good. I like that enormously.
Get on with it, Lestrade. I have a theatre to run. Beerbohm Tree will be here at 9. There'll be the devil to pay. I haven't stripped a set yet.
Very well. I have talked to you all in the course of my inquiries, and of course the murderer could be the one who found the body.
Sholto.
Oh, calm yourself, Harry. All I'm saying is I've known it before. But in this case, what motive do we have? Trevelyan Cavendish is rude to Leticia Bandicoot, so Leticia Bandicoot murders him? A little thin, you'll agree. No, the motive had to be more meaningful than that. So, what about you, Mr. Dysart?
Me?
The manager, whose theatre is not doing very well, is it? I couldn't help noticing your peeling paperwork, Mr. Dysart. Your single row of limelights where the Trocadero has 3. The fact that I had to send my constable out an hour ago because you have no telephone machine in your office. You needed money, and you got some of that money from Trevelyan Cavendish, except it wasn't enough, and he wanted it back. Is that why you killed him?
That's outrageous. I didn't.
Coat his glass with carbolic acid? No, you didn't. Which brings us to Lord Ferrers. Would you be so kind as to show us your hip flask, my lord?
Why, Oh, very well.
Harry, would you care to smell the contents of that?
Brandy. Not very good, I'm afraid.
I beg your pardon?
So that isn't how the poison was administered. Phenol gives off a distinctive odour. The sort of thing, ladies and gentlemen, that your maids clean household gadgets with.
With which your maids clean household gadgets?
Precisely, Mr. Wilde. Even in Tite Street, Chelsea.
You know where I live?
Oh, yes, Mr. Wilde, and where you hang out. And talking of hanging out, what exactly was your relationship with Trevelyan Cavendish?
Relationship? I have nothing to declare but my innocence.
Indeed, Mr. Wilde. Nothing I can touch you for, anyway.
Wait until you're asked.
Then, of course, there is Dame Ellen.
Moi?
Public humiliation must be a terrible thing for someone in your position. The jeers of the crowd. He left you unaltered at the altar. Can you ever forgive him for that?
For that, never. But I'd rather take every opportunity to exact my revenge. Death is too quick, too permanent. One gargle and it's all over.
Phenol, of course, can take 24 hours. Mr. Cavendish seems to have succumbed very quickly.
He always did.
But, of course, there were others with a motive. For example, Messrs. Gilbert and Sullivan, those whose West End productions were nearly ruined by him. But for that reason, Dame Ellen, you would be lying next door as well. Now, what puzzled me for a long time was the murder weapon.
Weapon?
Oh, yes. I must admit it's a new one on me. Trevelyan Cavendish swallowed poison, and not intentionally. For all his career may have been grinding to a halt, he was not the suicidal type. It couldn't have been mixed in the champagne, or somebody else will be conducting this inquiry now on several of us. So, I reasoned. Cavendish's glass. But phenol has a powerful smell. The glass had none. That's why, pardon me, my lord, I asked Harry to smell Lord Ferrers' hip flask a moment ago. No phenol there either. So, unless Leticia held the man down and poured it down his throat from a container I have yet
You're
to find...
floundering, Lestrade. We troopers know all about that. It's an old theatrical adage. If in doubt, walk about.
Good Lord! What on earth's that smell?
You haven't smelt it before?
Good God, no! I'd have remembered.
Not at Monsieur Morris's, for instance?
Eh?
Allow me to present an accessory to murder. In this little bottle that I wafted under Mr. Wilde's nose a moment ago, Golightly's gum for flyaway hair.
Eh?
What?
Eh?
It's an expensive glue. Several of you told me how proud Mr. Cavendish was of his hair, except that it wasn't his own, was it? Only some of it. That's why the arrogant old actor did his own hair, wanted no one else to know.
So the poison's in there?
No, Sir Arthur. The poison's here, in this comb.
What?
My God! Carbolic!
Precisely. But if you have a noseful of this,
Ugh.
and then you smell this...
Can't smell a blessed thing after that dreadful gun.
Exactly. Neither could Cavendish. Leticia, when the show was over, where did Cavendish go?
To his dressing room.
Why?
I don't know.
I do. To adjust his hairpiece. Harry, you dropped his cloak in Act 2. You didn't notice anything odd? In bending over, Trevelyan Cavendish came unglued. I saw it, but in all the excitement since I've forgotten it. The end of the show was the first chance he had to get himself together, as it were. Now, if I remember rightly, all of you were on stage at the time, except Sir Arthur, Mr. Gilbert, Mr. Wilde, and Lord and Lady Ferrers. This was an opportunist killing, ladies and gentlemen. Our murderer came here last night intending to kill Trevelyan Cavendish, and with phenol. But exactly how was it to be administered? That was inspirational. Wasn't it, Lady Ferrers?
I thought so.
Would you be so good as to take off your emeralds?
Now look here.
It's all right, Bertie. Don't fuss so. I'm afraid this clever gentleman here has rather spoiled our night, my dear. If you don't mind, Mr. Lestrade, I won't let you crush my emeralds underfoot, even though you're right in what you're thinking. They are paste. Just as Bertie's hip flask isn't silver, it's electro-plated nickel silver. Just as the brandy he drinks is a little below par, Harry. Just as the fund for which I've been collecting all these years doesn't go into any cause. No cause, that is, except mine.
There was no telephone in your office, Mr. Dysart, so I sent my constable to Lord Ferrers' bankers, Messrs. Coates. They didn't take kindly to being woken up in the wee small hours, but there it is. Sharp chappy, my constable. He has a diploma from the London Polytechnic in double-entry bookkeeping. Lord Ferrers is in debt to an amount that would buy the Adelphi 10 times over. Now, bankers are discreet people, at least most of them. Lord Ferrers' secret was safe with Messrs. Coates, but it wasn't safe with the likes of Trevelyan Cavendish, was it, Lady Ferrers?
Apparently not. The disgusting wretch learned that we Ferrers are in hock up to our escutcheon. What with Bertie's habits, the drink, the horses, a few unwise investments such as the Tay Railway, etc., we'd lost it all. It would have been the end of a family going back to the conquest. Oh, my darling, that perfect beast of a man was about to tell the newspapers. His own career was waning, and he saw the princely sum they offered him for his scandal-mongering as the passport to a secure retirement. Those acting lessons you thought I was having were my feeble attempt to get him to change his mind. It didn't work.
Good Lord, Effie. You silly thing. It didn't matter.
Oh, yes, it did, Bertie. I know what the family name means to you, what it has always meant to you. For the past 3 years I've been siphoning off the funds I've been raising to keep the bailiffs away. And then only yesterday, that appalling little man told me he was going to the News of the World and, failing them, to Horse and Hound. I bought the phenol. Poison is the woman's weapon, isn't it? Anyway, when the snivelling wretch's wig slipped, I'm amazed, my dear Ellen, that you didn't know he wore one. I thought all women noticed such things. When I saw it slip, I saw my chance. I excused myself from the box. All eyes were on Mr. Wilde at that stage anyway, and popped back to Cavendish's dressing room. What the abomination didn't know was that I had seen once, during rehearsals, the way he teased his own hair to cover the lines of his wig. He placed his comb in his teeth. The smell, as Mr. Lestrade has proved, would be hidden by Golightly's gum. So I smeared the comb liberally with the phenol. By the time he'd sucked on those toxic teeth, it would be all over. I expect he grimaced a little, but he obviously had time to wash it all down with at least 1 glass of champagne. That's as well. I wouldn't have denied him his last tipple.
Effie.
Oh, now, Bertie, don't take on so. They haven't hanged a member of the aristocracy since Lord Lovat, and that was in 1741 or thereabouts. Well, I shall come quietly, Mr. Lestrade. Do you have any bracelets to match my emeralds?
Thank you, your ladyship, but I don't think that will be necessary.
By the way, I understand they have a lovely little theatre in Holloway. Now I can count on your support, can't I?
In Exit Centre Stage, A Yarn of the Yard by M.J. Trow, the narrator was Kenneth Kendall and the cast was as follows. Inspector Lestrade, Reginald Marsh. Sir Arthur Sullivan, Bernard Meacham. William Gilbert, Michael Sheard. Oscar Wilde, Peter Lewis. Lady Eveline Ferrers, Barbara Walter. Trevelyan Cavendish, Ronald Good. Harry Bandicoot, James Pellow. Leticia Bandicoot, Carol Glover. Dysart, Mai Trow. Dame Ellen, Rosalind Alloway. Lord Ferrers, Ronald Good. The series produced by Michael Sheard. Studio direction by Dennis Chubb and Samantha Seaton Clark.